A ton of SEC powers are in action this Saturday for their spring finales. Included in that, the LSU Tigers. Coming off a disappointing 8-5 campaign, we bring in Billy Gomila, who writes for the Valley Shook on the SB Nation platform for LSU Athletics. Hey, Billy, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
Yeah, let's break down this quarterback situation. It also always seems to start there for most programs, but specifically when you've had some subpar play, as was the case last season in the wake of Zach Mettenberger leaving the season before. Of course, Anthony Jennings got his feet wet in the bowl game, and the Arkansas drive the previous season was given the job, earned the job. Brandon Harris seems to have the higher ceiling. How do you think this plays out at this point?
There's no real way to know right now. Most of the scuttlebutt has been that, neither guy has kind of been able to separate. I think that, most people would tell you that they want Brandon Harris to win the job. But at the end of the day, he has to win the job. He has to go out and show that he can beat out Anthony Jennings and win this job. I don't expect anything to be resolved until the first game next year against McNeese State. And it wouldn't surprise me if it maybe even spills over into that next week. I do know that Les Miles has, really laid the gauntlet down that, last year wasn't good enough. People have to be better. And I don't think he particularly really cares one way or the other who it is. And, I think they're going to try and do what they can.
Okay, Billy, let's look at the rest of the offense. You've got a complete beast in Leonard Fournette. What can you say about what he did as a freshman? I think you can kind of capitalize what he accomplished last season, that play against Texas A&M when he completely crushed the safety and route to the end zone. You got Travon Dural, came off a fine season despite the quarterback issues last season. Malachi Dupree, much is expected of him. Lyle Collins moves on to the NFL. Just kind of run through the rest of the offense and where there might be some question marks.
Honestly, quarterback's kind of it. You'll lose a pretty good fullback in Connor Neighbors, and actually his backup Melvin Jones is no longer with the team either. But you do return. You have a big time recruit coming in David Ducray, who is a fullback who can actually be something of a feature back and will probably get some carries. And it's going to revolve around Leonard Fournette. That's something I've tried to explain. Quarterback play, good or bad. When you got Leonard Fournette, you're going to be run heavy because you want to get that kid the ball. And the scariest thing is, coaches have been kind of unanimous in saying that he has been the most improved player on this team in the spring. And outside, I think there's lots of weapons at wide receiver, and I think a year of season is going to help. As much as the quarterbacks were a problem last year, wide receivers didn't help them a lot. Pretty much any defensive back that really got in their face and was physical and tried to push them around a little bit had success. And when you can't throw those short passes, going back to the A&M game, Anthony Jennings throws a slant because Travon Dural gets, can't push his guy off and cut in front and get to the ball. And it was 100% on Dural. Jennings gets the interception, but Dural wasn't where he needed to be and didn't beat the guy he needed to beat. And I think that with especially with the new receivers coach, Tony Ball, I think he's really emphasized being physical, having the right footwork at the line of scrimmage. And I think the wide receivers are going to help, that'll be enough, I think, to help the quarterback somewhat. I think the quarterbacks still have to improve, obviously, to get to where the offense totally wants to be. But I think the wide receivers are going to help a lot.
Billy Gomila joins us from the Valley Shook on the SB Nation platform for LSU Football and Athletics. Let's talk some defense, Billy. Typical LSU talent hits all over the place despite losing more early enrollees or early draft entries to the NFL the past few seasons than anybody in college football. In particular, if you look at those special players that this program churned out in the secondary 2009, 10, 11, I think you're getting back to that. Not that there's been a huge drop-off, but can you size up the secondary? Because you've got all sorts of breakout-type talent. Jamal Adams is a guy that not a lot of people know about, but he could really have an outstanding season.
And Jamal Adams, I expect to really emerge as a superstar this year. And Tre'Davious White, he didn't get a lot of pub last year, even now with Jalen Collins expected to be a high draft pick. But Tre'Davious White was the best corner in that team last year, and he might have been the best corner in the SEC. There were a lot of games where teams would not throw his way. And with him, Jalen Mills gives you a veteran senior at safety who can do a lot of different things, who can come down in the box and play the run, who can, line up in the nickel and cover slot receivers. And then Ricky Jefferson, who has made plays at times too, is another safety who could play. You've got Ed Paris, who, it's funny. This team signed 2 5-star cornerbacks in the offseason. Everybody kind of forget Ed Paris was a really big-time recruit. He didn't play a lot as a true freshman, but has locked down the other starting job and appears to be holding off Kevin Tolliver, the big-time recruit who came in early. The secondary is going to be great, and really up the middle, from the defensive tackles to middle linebacker Kendall Beckwith, who's probably about to emerge as a superstar. To the safeties, it's a really good safety combination. Up the middle, you just got a really stout defense.
Les Miles, 5 losses last season, 3 the previous 2 seasons after establishing a standard along with obviously Nick Saban, and then he kind of continued the process and winning a national championship in 2007 and being right there in the mix a number of times. 11 losses, let's see, in 3 years doesn't sit well. And from a national perspective, we expect LSU to be right there. This guy is a character, and we all know that. He kind of fascinates me from the standpoint that I think he has blatantly lost some football games, and we could go through the history, but at the same time, these kids seem to love him. They run through a wall for him. He inspires people. He has just built something there that's pretty special at LSU, despite maybe some down years. So just your thoughts about Les Miles, again, one of the more talked about coaches in college football.
Well, I think he's pretty clearly been the most successful coach in school history at this point, really. 10 years in, and in that time, the turnover at programs like Texas and Florida that you would think of as being, really stable places. Michigan's on its 3rd head coach since Les Miles was hired here, including 2 different times when they tried to hire him and were rebuffed. And people say he's lost quote unquote games on the sidelines, but he's won games on the sidelines too, I think. And that's, it all balances out. And were there times where maybe I wish some things he would have done differently? Yeah, but there were times when he's made calls that I wouldn't have made at that moment, and won games that, I'm not sure he had the better team in. And I think overall it balances out. You don't luck into 80% of your wins over 10 years. No matter what anyone says. He's continuously brought in talent. I think he's brought in good assistant coaches for the most part, and the program was quote unquote built, but he's maintained. We're 10 years in, and he's maintained it, and that's something that a lot of coaches haven't done. Urban Meyer, for all the success he's had, he flamed out at Florida in 5 years. Is he going to be at Ohio State in 10 years? I don't know. Probably, sure. And is he a great coach? Absolutely, but there's something to be said for just, consistently being there. And LSU's been right there. And have they won the way maybe Alabama's won? No, but who has?
And I think that's a good point that you bring up with Urban Meyer, that a lot of people forget about him. After winning the 2 national championships, he does lose 5 games his last season in Florida before leaving. And some people would argue, I think Will Muschamp in particular, that the cupboard wasn't quite as full as it had been a couple years earlier there in Gainesville. Billy Gomila joins us from Valley Shook on the SB Nation platform. Billy, I've read a lot of your stuff. Nice to have you on to break down some LSU football with the Tigers on the field, and us looking at that quarterback's position coming up on April 25th.
Well, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.